Well, welcome back to another episode of the Coordinated Chaos podcast. I'm your host, Georgia, and I'm just your Type B bestie going deep on all things women's health, behind the scenes of building a business, and life's defining moments. Episode 16. We've made it to 16. I keep saying how excited and proud I am that I've made it this far, but I truly am, and we're just going to keep ticking those boxes as we go along. The latest update, guys, is that my car is broken down. I've hired a car for 2 weeks, and it's actually not that bad. Aside from that, added extra cost, the car needs to be repaired, and then I'm hiring a car. But it's been really nice to have a new car. But other than that, honestly, guys, I have no tea for you. I have no life updates. I am just working really hard right now and ticking the boxes. Funnily enough, today's episode is all about how to fix your sleep and actually get the most out of your day. And you'll learn why I have the experience and the knowledge to share this with you guys. But I thought it was pretty funny because I woke up naturally with no alarm this morning at 4:30 a.m., which is not unusual because I usually wake up at 4:30 a.m. So that's just my body clock doing its thing. But I just felt so tired. It's currently 4:40 p.m. I usually like to film this around lunchtime or just after lunchtime. Give me time to edit it, get it done, get it uploaded before the weekend. But I was just so tired. I had to have a nap. And then I did a little dance session. I had the music really loud. And I just had to get myself into the right zone, the right frequency to deliver my message to you guys today. My journey with sleep is something that I haven't spoken about a lot on social media. I feel like as I was going through it, it kind of made me feel like a bit of an imposter in some ways, that I was someone who cared so deeply about their health. I embodied that I had a healthy lifestyle. I went to bed early. I woke up early and, I got after it. I've always been someone that's going after things and building the business and doing the podcast and ticking all the boxes and doing my workouts and eating well. But genuinely, at the time of me going through my little sleep issue era, I felt like an imposter because I felt like shit. Okay? I was functioning at such a low level of sleep that I genuinely learned that was the norm. It felt normal to me at that time, but over years and accumulated sleep deprivation, I realized that there was actually something not quite right. And as you'll learn across the course of today's podcast, it took me a while, ages, and lots of looking back and reflecting on different parts of my life and how I saw that pattern starting really young. But it started to get worse and worse and worse in the last 5 years, let's say. Maybe even longer than that, to be honest. Maybe the last 10 years. But I had been told all my life that I was a mouth breather, a snorer, one might say. Literally snore the house down. Sleep in a different room kind of energy. And I got told by friends, family members, partners, all of the things, right? And there are so many times that I look back now and I'm like, how did we not pick up on this? But as life does, you always learn the lessons you need to learn in due course, in the time that you're meant to. Because I feel like sometimes there are other lessons that you're learning alongside the lesson and that kind of thing. I hope you're following and I hope you understand what I'm saying. But my first recollection of feeling sleepy, being a sleepy girl, was during high school. I have a vivid memory of being in the science room, probably in year 11 or so, and falling asleep in the back row. I remember literally being on the corner. It was the door was over here out into the yard, and then the corner of the room, it was a square, but we faced the corner, and up the front was where the whiteboard, there was electronic whiteboards then, and we did most things on paper. We didn't have laptops in classes then because I'm old. But I remember sitting in the corner of the tables at the back and sleeping with my head on the table like this. And it was around the same time that I had started rowing. So I had early morning starts, and I think I was still going to bed at a reasonable time. I was getting enough sleep, but I was exhausted. And I think at that time, you're just like, well, she's a rower, so she wakes up early and blah, 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 blah. I hadn't quite put those puzzle pieces together yet of why was I actually more tired than a lot of other people. Then it was friends filming me, like sleeping in public, when you're traveling or you're going on a road trip and you have a nap in the car. My friends would film me or take photos of me with my mouth like catching flies, which obviously is pretty embarrassing. Then it was sleeping in, missing alarms for work, taking naps under the desk at work. Then it was the early morning classes and split shifts at F45 that were just draining me. One-way ticket to burnout, I'll tell you that much. But this fatigue that I was feeling was genuinely threatening my ability to do my job well and maintain respect from my employers and colleagues alike as well. But at that time, again, it was at a time in my life and I was like in my 20s and I was like going out still quite a lot, or like most weekends, having fun and enjoying myself. And that was still a big part of my life. But it wasn't normal. The tiredness that I felt still wasn't normal. And I couldn't like catch up from lack of sleep on the weekends through the start of the week. And it looked really bad, obviously, like how I was showing up and performing and all of the things in the workplace. But at that time, I just like didn't really like think twice about it because I was just like, well, I don't know what to do. Like I'm sleeping like what seems like a normal amount, 7 to 8 hours a night, but I still feel absolutely wrecked all the time. Then it was my boyfriend at the time kicking me out of bed when I stayed over so that I could sleep on the couch in his share house. An all-boys share house. And yes, if you've listened to the other episodes, this is my main character ex-boyfriend that comes up in a lot of conversations. But given was his behavior, you can tell that this was the kind of behavior that low-key ruins you a little bit, leaves you with trauma. And of course, I can look back now and I could see those red flags. And I'm just like mad at myself, honestly, for not just like going home and sleeping at my own house, in my own bed. But as you do when you're young and in love, you think that you have to be with that person all the time. And you think that, how can I make this, how can we be closer? How can we grow this relationship? But I was looking at the red flags and I was seeing green, colorblind, something like that. But alas, again, this podcast is not about this guy or that story. And shortly after that, he got the flick. Also, shortly after that breakup was when I moved to Canada and my entire lifestyle changed. My sleep never really felt like much of an issue whilst I was living in Canada. Since I had a lot more flexibility in my hours, I was able to get more sleep and I had a lot more time to recover when I did have a late night or miss a bit of sleep. Usually had more time and space and like downtime to relax and recover properly from those. And I was less stressed living in a ski bum lifestyle too. Just like overall, there was less responsibility and less stress in my adult life. And I did have some level of trauma and I still felt nervous around partners when I had partners over there and spending nights with them. Like that period of my life after being with the main character S, I definitely struggled to relax into relationships, especially when we would spend the evening together. And I just really like tossed and turned all night and just felt really stressed and very like conscious, like super conscious that I would be keeping them awake, that I was such a burden and I was the reason why someone couldn't fall asleep quickly. It was honestly, it's pretty horrible. I can gladly say that we're over this now. But then it wasn't until I returned back to Australia that I got back into my fitness route. It wasn't until I returned back to Australia and I got back into my fitness career and the routine that surrounded that, where there were more early mornings and late nights, and they were relentless. I worked 6 days a week. I worked 6 early mornings. I'd work 4 nights a week. And at the time, it truly felt like I had no other choice, as I just started out with my own business and building it up was my number one priority. And of course, the customer is always right and they get the hours that they want. I lacked boundaries and I said yes a lot. And there is obviously a level of compromise when it comes to like being a service-based business. You definitely have to be available and not be entitled to absolutely every hour, because the reality is, in the industry that I work in fitness, people need to train before and after work. So you need to be available before and after work. However, I now have more boundaries and more set times where I don't work in the evenings as opposed to working in the evenings. I got burnt out as fuck from doing that though. And this is a big reason why I started to implement more boundaries and more time off. I needed multiple coffees a day. I needed naps every single day. I could barely focus on the work that I needed to do in between. Like, this is a big common misconception when it comes to personal training and fitness. I'm speaking on behalf of myself especially, but I'm sure other personal trainers will agree as well. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that people don't realize. Like, we don't just rock up, run your session, and then go back to bed. We have to program, we contact people and do follow-ups, we have marketing, we have social media, I have the podcast. There's always something to be done, and I'm always also upskilling and studying and all of the things. So I'm basically working right now out of 3 different gyms to run my business and work as a coach. I have a podcast, which is a weekly recording, uploading, editing, and releasing, which also has its own social media. As you will probably know, if you're listening to this, you will have seen the social media for it. And then I do a full social media strategy for my coaching business online. I also have online clients as well, which I'm trying to grow. So there's a lot going on, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. And the problem lied with that was that I was trying to do basically all of what I'm doing now, but I was so severely sleep deprived, it was insane. Over the course of my adult life, I attempted to investigate my situation, try and figure out why I was so fatigued, why I needed naps all the time, and why I had literally no energy, and continued to repeatedly get burnt out over and over again. I did a breathing course called Buteyko, which reteaches you how to breathe through your nose and rely less on your mouth. I also went to an ENT like years and years ago to see what might be wrong structurally. But when I was a kid, I didn't get tonsillitis enough for them to consider taking out my tonsils when I was a kid. But I feel like I also felt like it wasn't just the way that I was breathing specifically, because I attempted also to tape my mouth in the early days, and I would just rip it off at night because I was still having apneas and I was like stopping breathing. So my body would wake up or my brain would wake up and I'd rip it off. Really not even knowing. Like I was like pretty much unconscious, still half asleep when that was happening at the night. But that's what led me to realize that it had to be structural. There had to be something going on with the way that my airways were structured that was causing me not to be able to breathe properly overnight. It wasn't until about 2023 that I finally booked myself in for a sleep study. And they hook you up to monitoring machines and you do an overnight monitoring of your sleep, which I fortunately was able to do a home sleep study. So I went into the clinic, they taped me all up, I had to leave it all on overnight and then unplug it and then take it back to the clinic. They do the reading, I'd get a report, meet with the sleep clinician, and then they would tell you what's going on. Because on all accounts, even when people weren't in the same room as me, they would be worried if they couldn't hear me, like if it went quiet. So in this house where I currently live now, I used to come and stay on the fold-out couch that my housemate and best friend Lucy had in the spare room. And when I would sleep over there, she would say, if it's silent in there, I'm worried, like I have to check on you because it's so normal for you to be making so much like breathing noises overnight that it makes me scared that you've passed away. I shouldn't laugh. Passed away or stopped breathing in your sleep overnight if I can't hear you. So that's how insane it was. Like that's how extreme this whole thing was. And of course, the sleep study came back with extremely high and extremely dangerous scores of obstructive sleep apnea. I wasn't even getting any REM sleep. I was having like 50 obstructions an hour or something absolutely crazy like that. And so I was never getting any of that deep restorative kind of sleep. And I never remembered my dreams. I always woke up so groggy. Again, I was napping during the day almost every single day. I'm not even kidding. And it became clear that my abnormally large tonsils, when the sleep clinician had a look, were what were obstructing my airways, which funnily enough has always been an area of concern from doctors as I was growing up. But again, since I never had that much tonsillitis, or it was like under the threshold for tonsillitis, they didn't want to take it out. But now it became clear that this is the course of action that was needed. So I was referred on to an ENT, and I was honestly so relieved when this happened because I knew deep down that this was what the problem was, and this is the thing that was going to be the solution to the core, to the fatigue, and it was affecting my life. It was affecting my health. It was affecting my career capacity so deeply, and not to mention my fear of building relationships with people, and so because of that trauma from my main character ex. And so in 2024, I had a tonsillectomy. And prior to that happening, I ensured that I did everything that I could to optimize my sleep. I even at one point had a CPAP machine for a little bit in the lead up to the surgery, which that was one thing that I was like, I'm only in my 30s. Like, I really feel like there has to be another way than subscribing to a CPAP machine for the rest of my life. And I know that CPAP machines can be life-changing for a lot of people, and I definitely was willing to give it a go for a bit, but it wasn't great. It wasn't, my heart goes out to those people that can't do anything about their sleep apnea and they have to have a CPAP. Honestly, making the changes in my sleep hygiene and my sleep routine and all the things that I did before going to bed at night made a huge difference in the lead up to my surgery. I was also told at the time of my ENT consultation and tonsillectomy that I also have a deviated septum, which means that my nose needs to have deviated septum surgery to straighten and to increase the size of my nasal holes inside my nose. And I'm yet to get that done, but I am definitely wanting to get that done in the future because I still have some congestion and like very sensitive to like hay fever, and some nights I'm not able to take my mouth because my nose is congested, especially when I have a cold and that kind of thing. I'm also no longer burning out. I'm no longer having naps every afternoon. Today I did have a nap, but that was because I was extremely tired and I needed to show up on my best behavior for this podcast. But I was starting to understand the importance of sleep and how much sleep can truly change the way you show up and change your capacity. And I'm sure there are some mothers out there listening to this that have newborns or that they've been through the newborn stage and they're like, hell yeah, sister, we need our sleep because it just affects your cognition so much. So now 2 years later, I've had my tonsillectomy, but I still carry a lot of the habits that I built prior to my surgery with me still today. And so I'm going to tell you about some of the science, some of the benefits, and how you can also optimize your sleep, because I am truly a different human now when it comes to my energy levels. My afternoon naps are non-existent, and the quality of sleep that I can have now are worlds apart to the old version of my sleep. Like, sleep truly will extend your life. If you're getting good quality sleep and really prioritizing your sleep, you will avoid sickness, you'll have a longer life, you'll avoid more disease. Like, it is literally a prevention tool. And when you look at the evidence of decreasing sleep, almost every disease that's killing us in this developed world, it's really hard not to look further at the importance of sleep. All of the studies are telling us that the shorter you sleep, the shorter your life is. You could make the case that going without sleep is one of the quickest, if not the quickest, way to decrease your function and lead to death alongside dehydration. The Guinness World Record has actually banned the attempts of going without sleep, which should highlight to you the imperative need for sleep as a basis of survival. And there is stats out there as well to say that 1 in 2 adults in first world nations is chronically sleep deprived. If that doesn't tell you anything about how important sleep is and how little sleep we get and our environments are affecting that, I don't know what else will. And I think it's quite interesting to observe our culture too. Like, our culture is one where we wear a badge of honor for the lack of sleep that we get, for the hustle and the grind. We symbolize a strong work ethic or toughness with a lack of sleep. But really, it's actually going to lead us to disease, earlier death, and just overall lack of performance in terms of our cognition, in terms of the way we show up, the way that we look after our bodies. And I think it's really important that we have this conversation about how we can improve your sleep. When it comes to the pillars of sleep as well, there are 4 pillars that are scientifically backed or focused on, and they are regularity, so how consistent your sleep schedule is; continuity, how much you're waking up per night; quantity, how much in total and how much in each stage are you getting. So your NREM, REM, light, deep sleep, and gorgeous old Garmin here usually gives us a bit of a breakdown. Or I know there's a lot of other rings out there that optimize your health and stuff too. So there are other things that could be helping with that too, or helping you to analyze data and be able to make changes based on what those things tell you. Sure, they may not be 100% accurate. They're literally on your wrist or your finger, but it's a good guide to help you optimize the way you feel on a daily basis. And you as well may be feeling like, oh, but everything's fine because this is normal, this is the way it's always been. But by looking closely at things like that, it can tell you that maybe you've just been functioning at a level that makes it feel normal when it's not. And the last one is quality. How good is the sleep? Have you had caffeine? Have you had alcohol? Just because you're getting 8 hours of sleep doesn't necessarily mean that the quality is there either. And that is definitely something that I had to learn the hard way. My personal top tips though, and these are the things that I implemented to help me feel better prior to getting a tonsillectomy, and I still do to this day, look like things like low and warm toned lights around the house. So dimming lights. I've got a red light in my room, and I always do a lot of things with like the lights down low in the evenings. And Lucy, my best friend and housemate, she always teases me because I like doing everything in the dark. But actually I learned this from a friend and mentor, a wonderful friend and mentor in the industry, in the health industry, Caitlin Mania. Around the time that I was increasing my investigation, I did have a conversation with her and was speaking about my fatigue and my energy levels, and also looking into tonsillectomy. And Caitlin said for me to try turning down the lights, because I was waking up, putting all the lights on, and then going into a fluorescent lit gym and not seeing the light of day, like not seeing sunlight. And she said, your nervous system is fried and your circadian rhythm is messed up as well from having the big lights on. The same way that our brains are altered by looking at screens, scrolling, being on the computer late at night, the big lights in the house also send signals to our brain that it's not time to wind down or time to wake up. So it applies to both morning and evening as well. And I can confirm that I definitely feel a lot more relaxed when the lights are dimmed down or I have my red light in my room. It really just helps me get into the zone of like bed. And even in the morning too, it just like helps wake me up more slowly. And I have an alarm as well that slowly wakes me up gradually over a 30-minute period. So the alarm might go off at 4:30 a.m, but sometimes if I'm in a deep sleep at that time, it will wake me up gradually, which is much better for your like sleep cycle where you wake up in it, because if you wake up in the middle of a deep sleep, that's when you're going to feel really groggy. And I also learned not that long ago as well that you get a lot more of your REM sleep, which is that deep restorative sleep, later in the night or like early hours of the morning. So sometimes if you've had a disrupted sleep during the night, what you might notice is that you fall back asleep at a certain point. Let's say you fall back asleep at like 2 a.m. and the alarm's going off at 4:30 a.m. I know 4:30 a.m. alarm is not common for a lot of people, but we're using that as the example today because that's what time I wake up. You wake up at 2:30, you stir a bit, you might need to go to the bathroom, something like that. You feel a bit restless, but eventually you fall back asleep and then you wake up, 4:30 alarm, like it shocks you and you feel groggy and you feel like so hard to actually wake up. Whereas when you have that slow, gradual alarm, it helps you just ease back into the real world from the underworld. The second thing I do as well is ensure that I have as much regularity in my sleep as possible, meaning that I have sleep and wake times that are pretty much the same every single day. Obviously, there are exceptions to that rule, and especially when I'm traveling or I'm on holidays or I have time off and I want to have a different sleep schedule, aka later start this morning, still woke up at 4:30 anyway, I notice that my body adjusts to these times. So if you're away on holidays and you have no alarm going off for like 7 days straight, you'll notice that your body adjusts back to a different schedule to what you're doing on that holiday, right? Another thing that I do as well is I take creatine consistently. As research has shown that it supports your brain's cognition and function and also reduces the effects of sleep deprivation as well. So a slightly higher dose, I think it's around 10 grams, can really help ward off fatigue and regulate your circadian rhythm. So specifically as well after traveling and you might be like out a little bit jet lagged or something like that, it's good to take a higher dose around the times that you're trying to adjust back to the current time zone. And on circadian rhythm as well, getting sunlight in your eyes ASAP as soon as you wake up. And I know that isn't always like possible, especially in Melbourne when you wake up, let's say you wake up at 5:30 and the sun doesn't come up until 7:30. Just as long as you get outside, I think in the morning is really, really good. Like, let's be realistic. Let's like actually make this work for the common lifestyle. But obviously when you first wake up at 5:30 in the morning in Melbourne, it's still dark, so you do have to wait till the sun comes up. But as long as you get outside, even if it's overcast, you get some sunlight into your eyes, and that really can help you regulate your circadian rhythm and teach your body that it's like, I'm rising with the sun and I'm going to bed when the sun sets. I also now have been mouth taping and using nose strips to open up my airways and help me sleep, breathe through my nose and retrain my body to breathe that way. Because like I mentioned, somewhere along the way, and my mum says that it happened when I was a kid, I learned to be a mouth breather. And it was when I was younger, I was sick quite a bit, and I was dairy intolerant, still am dairy intolerant, and I would get congested and then I would end up being a mouth breather. I was a mouth breather. And at first, before I had my tonsillectomy, I struggled to keep the tape on my mouth. Like I said, I would rip it off and I'd have another apnea and like be like, ugh. But now that the tonsillectomy has been done and there's no longer anything obstructing my airways in my throat, the tape is really, really good. And I can actually feel myself like fully relaxing into sleep a lot more when I'm breathing through my nose. My breath slows down, my heart rate slows down, everything relaxes and I get a much better, well-rested, deeper sleep. As well, recently, I've been having a kiwi before bed because they have a high level of natural melatonin, which will help you have a deeper sleep at night. They say to have 2. I only have 1. They're also good for fiber to keep you regular on the toilet, in the bathroom. I also avoid having caffeine after lunch. This is the other thing, guys. I had coffee after lunch yesterday. I think it was like 2 p.m. And then this morning, I woke up way too early. So that is the evidence. That's the evidence. Also, taking magnesium on a regular basis can help relax your nervous system and help you wind down and get a deeper level of sleep as well. A couple of other things you can swap out to: reading instead of scrolling at night. I know that was definitely something that I massively prioritized before my tonsillectomy as well, because I noticed that when I did look at my screen right before bed, it would take me a little bit longer to wind down. I was so wired but tired, and then looking at the screen, it just did not help me one bit at all. And then also, of course, a couple of modalities that I talked about a couple of times on the podcast are breath work and meditation and journaling even. I just think they're really great ways to get the things out of your brain onto paper and away from you so that you can fully shut down and have a beautiful night's sleep. I probably, in terms of like actually laying in bed, closing my eyes, lights are out and stuff, I will probably do breath work the most. I will just do box breathing, 4 counts in, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, repeat, fall asleep. It's great. I love it so much. And that wraps up the episode on how to fix your sleep and actually get the most out of your day. I hope you guys have found this to be helpful. If you have, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the podcast. Subscribe, like, follow, all of the things. And I'm so glad you're here with us on episode 16. And hopefully we'll see you again on episode 17, wherever we're coming from, on the Coordinated Chaos podcast. We'll see you then.